I'd like to say to you that I have all these episodes planned out way in advance, and I know exactly where I'm going and what album I'm going to cover, but that's just not the case. If that ever gave you any inspiration on starting your own thing, I hope it's that I am always flying by the seat of my pants, and yet I am continuing to bring episodes to you, even if at the very last second, I literally changed direction. And let me tell you what happened. I had thought to myself, you know what album I'm going to cover? Temple of the Dog. Because what a perfect album that I've yet to cover on the show. My cover band is called Temple of the Dads. It's just great. And then I all of a sudden looked it up. And I was like, I did do Temple of the Dog. I already did it. I did it in 2024. That's what happens when you get to episode 97. There's been a lot of episodes, and I've covered some of my favorite albums of all time. And sometimes you forget. You go, oh, I've already covered that album. And there are records that I did early on the show, before on the audio version, that I could put sound clips in them. And I thought, like, it would be fun to go back and do those again. But in all honesty, I switched directions to what album I was going to do at the very last second. I just was like, okay, what's another meaningful album to me that I have yet to cover on this show? And that's what led me to choose this. This album was a very big deal for me as a teenage young metalhead, finding his footing, channeling his rage. Yes, Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power. It's time to do it. I'm wearing my Metallica shirt that I got last year when I finally saw them on tour, where I saw Suicidal Tendencies and Pantera open. So I don't think I have any Pantera clothing, but I thought this would at least give the best homage that I could to the band. So we're going to talk about Pantera's Vulgar Display of Power. And this episode isn't going to be for everybody. Not everybody out there likes this band. Not everybody out there is into metal or this category of metal. And of course, there is controversy surrounding Phil Anselmo's behavior, certain aspects of members of the band over the years, two of which have since left the world. But all I'm going to try to do really is just talk about what this album was for me in 1992. That's where I want to start things off, and I'd like to approach it that way. But I understand if it's not your cup of tea and you can't get behind supporting this, but this was an important album that shaped a lot of my interests in metal, the sound. I just think it's a fantastic album. It's obviously the top of the bands, and just for me personally, I can still enjoy this album in particular and a lot of Pantera's catalog, but that's my personal decision and my personal choice. So I'll let you do whatever you want to do. But let's get into it. If you want to stick around, it's time to talk about Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power. Let's go.
Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Gibbons.
What a crazy turn to go from the Dusk, this like film noir, longing, lustful, soulful album, just talking about the heart and the feeling and loneliness, to go to Vulgar Display of Power. Yet, interestingly enough, I was listening to these two albums close to the same time, and I still very easily could go over to Vulgar Display and listen to Dusk back then, and I can now as well. And I really loved every moment of seeing Pantera live for the first time before Metallica this last fall. It was so fun. I got to go to Colorado to do it because they weren't coming through LA, and it was such a nostalgic trip. They sounded amazing. You know, it's really just Phil Anselmo out there, and I think Rex Brown might have been playing with him as well. But let's get on to Distrokid first. You know this already. Distrokid is the link that I give you so that you can save 30% off your music uploads every year. or at least the first year that you do it. I actually don't think it goes past that first year. But the point of it is, if you're going to upload music, you put it on that link, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof, and it will take 30% off your total for the year. And I think that whatever you include in there as well, you could do the basic package or more features, more things to unlock, more services, but whatever the total is, 30% off if you go in through my link. So make sure you're taking advantage of that. distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. Save you that 30% off your first year. So Vulgar Display of Power, Pantera, like I said up top, this isn't for everybody, but there's something about this record that it really took my breath away and my introduction to it. It comes out in February of 1992, to be specific, February 25th, 1992. And how I come across Vulgar Display of Power, I think I've talked on a previous episode about this. It must have been the summer of 1992 when I was working with my church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we would do these service projects during the summer. It was a Methodist church, and we would do these things like go to houses that needed their paint scraped off and then repainted, or clean up some, the trash and whatnot. So you'd work during the summer on these houses. And this is one of the service projects that I was involved in. I can't for the life of me remember the name of the kid, because he wasn't a kid who went to our church regularly. He was just on this service project. But you would go to the church and you would take a bus in, and then you would go work all day, and then you would bus back to the church, and then your day would be done. And that was what you had to do. And there was this kid, and he gave me, or at least let me borrow, a cassette tape. And on one side was Pantera's Vulgar Display of Power, and on the other side was the Smashing Pumpkins' Gish. Wow. This is definitely going to shape young Jacob's interests and likes when I first listened to the cassette in the Walkman. But interestingly enough, the sound of this Gish dub that I heard, while they would soon become my favorite band of all time, the first kind of listen through after I got through Vulgar Display, I wasn't grabbed. And wait. I love Gish. But there was something about the way that this was recorded that it was very, very trebly. It almost sounded like not a great transfer, not a great copy of Gish. It was there wasn't a lot of deep end. There wasn't a lot of bass. And so it just all sounded very kind of in my ears. It wouldn't be until I heard Drown on the single soundtrack, which would have been that summer too, that then I start to completely come around and I'm like, this is my favorite band of all time. But what really took my breath away was Pantera. Because at this point in time, I was a metal guy. I loved Metallica. I loved Megadeth. I liked a little bit of Anthrax. I had conflicting feelings about Slayer because of the whole devil thing, which is not a big deal at all. But I did when I was a kid. And along comes this album that is just riddled with F-bombs. Just stickered with that parental advisory sticker, so heavy. At least for anything that I'd gotten my hands on at this point. Sure, there was a lot of hip hop and rap at the time that probably had tons of language. There might have been a lot of other albums out there that had it. But for me, not a lot of the music I was listening to was coming with that parental advisory, explicit language. And this was one that I was like, oh, damn. And I loved it. It was so cathartic. However, this age, when I was entering into puberty at this age, hearing things like fucking hostile, I felt so guilty and ashamed while listening to it on a church bus. But I also loved it. I loved it so much. There was something, I could feel my blood like boiling in my body. Just this, I wasn't an athlete. I was going through awkward times. I was a teenager who just felt small and powerless. And this is in the height of like being picked on and bullied at school, really feeling like I don't belong anywhere, especially amongst boys, amongst males. And something about this music was just so cathartic. let's get into the history of this album. The title of the album, Vulgar Display of Power, comes from the movie The Exorcist. Now, Phil Anselmo is a big horror movie fan, and he says that he didn't realize that when he came up with the name for the album, that he subconsciously pulled it from The Exorcist. Like, it was something that somebody either pointed out or realized after the fact that it was a line of dialogue from the film. And then he was like, oh, yeah, it's a great line from The Exorcist. And that's where Vulgar Display of Power comes from, which is such a great title. When I decided to do a video about Pantera on social media way back in 2021, it was for This Love off this album. Because, like I said, it was so influential, and that was just an amazing combination of a love ballad that was also heavy as fuck. And I loved it. The album was produced by Terry Date, and that man has been producing records for decades. So many incredible albums. Mother Love Bone, Helmet, Deftones, Soundgarden. I even saw that he was involved on the Smashing Pumpkins Zeitgeist. And so when you read off a lot of these records, you see, wow, the guy knows how to record heavy. He knows how to record depth of guitars and drum and bass and make it feel like it's going to tear through the speakers and rip your heart out of your chest like Temple of Doom. Terry Date clearly knows how to capture that sound, and that is why he was the perfect man to record this album. And he also helped them with Cowboys from Hell, Far Beyond Driven. He was involved in helping Pantera produce their albums. So the classic lineup is Philip Anselmo, Dimebag Darrell, Rex Brown, and Vinnie Paul. Now, funny enough, during this time, during Vulgar Display, up until this point, because they'd been more of a glam metal, Pantera was more of a glam metal band. Phil Anselmo was singing those high-pitched, screeching glam sounds. And it was so funny because the first thing I ever heard this band do was Vulgar Display. And then I went back to Cowboys from Hell, and you hear a little touches of it there. And then you go earlier than that, and it's like totally a different band. But the band that it become on this is just super heavy, super metal. His voice is all more embracing the hardcore style. Although what I really love about Phil Anselmo's voice, especially on this record and the ones that would come afterwards, is yes, he has a hardcore vocal style, but he has a lot of different kind of pitches that he can do in the scream. I find that dynamic to be essential to me enjoying it, because there are some hardcore sounding bands that I enjoy, but I get a little, it's not for me when the singer's scream is on the same sound the whole time. I'm not saying I don't enjoy it, but if somebody will show me a band and the hardcore guy's scream is on, like, if you were to measure the sound of that scream, it's always on the same thing, that tends to run its course with me a lot faster than if you can go, can't you see I'm easily bothered by persistence? That is, I just sang it to you, but you can hear what I mean with Phil Anselmo's way of singing in a scream. It's a bark, it's a growl, but he's going dynamically all these different places. And that's what really impressed me. Plus, something about Dimebag, his guitar tone, which is like going distorted through like a tube, like through a cylinder, like it was going to slice right through you. And it's groove, the blues, the slippery, bluesy tones that it's like you turn the guitar switch to the bluesy tones. And that was just so uniquely them, the thundering of Vinnie Paul. They had really created their own sound. I was going to say, he went by Diamond Darrell because of the glam metal stuff. I remember even reading on Guitar World magazines, it said Diamond Darrell, and I think on liner notes, maybe even for Vulgar Display, it said Diamond Darrell, which was much more from the metal days. And then right around this time, he switches it to Dimebag, which is much more stoner, much more heavy metal, much more cool. But it was Diamond Darrell for those of you who don't remember. So they're recording this all through 1991. And there's some key things that happen that really inform the album sound. So one of the major things that happens in 1991 is Metallica drops the Black Album. The shirt I'm wearing, it's not for the Black Album. This one says, I'm inside, open your eyes. Okay, this is sad but true. Yeah, this is okay. That's what it says on the shirt. So this is definitely sad but true. This is off the Black Album. And I enjoyed the Black Album, but again, my journey I've done the Black Album on the show before. I was a kid. I was a young kid. And my journey into metal is like, I'm a much younger age. I'll oftentimes hear from older Gen X. You know, I was born in 1978 and you cover the Black Album. And if somebody was born from like 1970 to 1976 hears you defending it, they get really mad and they get really frustrated. And like, that's where they sold out. That's where they're really upset by everything the Black Album represents. And I get that vantage point, but you're older than me. You were an older kid. I was a younger guy hearing the Black Album and I was like, this is awesome. I like it. I didn't know that Metallica was like betraying who they were, right? That was the sentiment of older kids. So my experience with it is just very different. So Pantera, who adore and worship Metallica, and they really are the iconic thrash metal band to come before, and they get the Black Album and they're like disappointed. They're like, this isn't the thrash band that we know and love. This is like commercial and sleek and produced. And it was. It worked because it brought Metallica from, you know, one of the all-time great metal bands to like worldwide fame and changed the trajectory for them forever. And Pantera has said, you know, members have said like, oh, well, years later, I went back and listened and it's a great album. But at the time, it was like, oh, damn, this isn't heavy enough. We need to be heavier. We have some shoes to fill. We could catch up with like Megadeth and Anthrax and be one of the greats if we just go harder. So they hear the Black Album and they're like, let's go harder than we've ever been before. And that really inspires them. But also, they are recording for a few months and then they're asked to go and do the Monsters of Rock tour in Russia with Metallica and AC/DC. And they go out and I don't know if you've ever seen footage from this tour, but this is like the famous shots where you see like Metallica playing to a sea of people in Moscow. These are infamous clips from the internet of like, oh my God, I've never seen that many people at a concert in my life. 500,000 people out this open area and Metallica's just destroying. So Pantera goes on tour and they're treated like stars, even though nobody knows who they are. I mean, people are just going crazy and they're getting all this confidence for how much they've got it. They're intimidated at first, like, oh shit, we're going to go play in Russia with Metallica and AC/DC, and they go and they feel great. It's burst of confidence. So they go back in the studio and now they're feeling like we're unstoppable. We can fucking write a record that's going to rip people's faces off. And you know what? It did. It ripped my face off with the opening track, Mouth for War. That is the first song I ever heard from Pantera. I was watching Headbangers Ball with my brother and I saw that song, that video with that dude screaming. And I was like, yeah, I want in on this. I was just learning how to play guitar, picking up Guitar World magazines and learning that that opening riff. I was like, oh my God, I am going to be a metal guitar god. That groundbreaking for young Jacob to hear Mouth for War. This song about taking all this rage and being productive with it, doing something with it. Mouth for War. This was my introduction to Pantera. But then we get two songs back to back that are my two favorite Pantera songs of all time. And they're just back to back, 2 and 3. And I think number 3 is probably my favorite of all time. But let's talk about A New Level. A New Level. God, this song rocks so hard. That opening riff, open, and then going into the palm mute, that climbing up and that drop D, just nasty. A new level, you can hear in the lyrics of it, a new level of confidence and power. These are some dudes coming back from Russia, coming back from playing in front of all those people and being like, yeah, we can destroy. We've got it all. Because these guys had been at it for a while. They'd been making records. They'd been trying the glam metal thing, and Cowboys from Hell had gone all right. It had had some success, and they toured for like 250 shows nonstop. But their lives hadn't changed yet. They were still struggling financially. They were getting headway, but these guys were not feeling the wealth or success. You know, while they're recording Vulgar Display, I think that Vinnie, Paul, and Dimebag are both just living at home with their mom. They're brothers. If you're listening, I'm assuming you knew that Dimebag Daryl Abbott and Vinnie Paul Abbott are brothers. And also, if you don't know, they both are gone. Dimebag Daryl was shot on stage in 2004 at a show. A guy walked up with a gun and shot him during a concert, killed a bunch of other people, and they say he had mental health issues and he was, you know, believed that Pantera had stole songs from him or something, deranged. But he shot Dimebag on stage right in front of his own brother, Vinnie Paul. And then Vinnie Paul died of, you know, heart-related complications years later. But they're gone now. But during this time, during this album, they were living with their mom, and I think Phil and Rex were like living in apartments right next to where they were recording in Texas, which was a studio that I think belonged to the Abbott brothers' dad. I'm pretty sure if I remember that correctly. So, a new level, crushing, incredible, powerful riff. My second favorite Pantera song, which leads me to one of the greats, one of the all-time greats, Walk. Now, you may have never heard a single Pantera song in your entire life. Odds are this one's come across you. It's been used in probably sporting events and transitions for like wrestling or something. But this thing, that riff, you can't deny that little pull on that guitar right there, that's not a signature iconic riff. And apparently Dimebag would play it while they were doing sound checks, and the band loved it. And they're like, that's amazing. And it became Walk, Respect. And I've read that it had a lot to do with the way that the people in their town that were hanging around them treated them differently when they came back from Cowboys from Hell. That there was this kind of attitude surrounding them like, oh, you guys think you're hot shit now. You think you're a big deal. And it was really of like, you know, get the fuck out of here. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what we're putting into this. And we haven't changed. We are who we are, and we'll continue to be that way. But Walk, I've used this video for, you know, a video about songs that I listen to that are heavy in the car, because it's just, it's one of the best. It's one of the greats. I would say this is in my top 10 metal songs of all time. I can't deny the fact that Walk by Pantera is just a crusher. All right, this is where, you know, I'm already listening to this tape on the bus to go to a church, scrape paint off a house with my friends, and on comes fucking Hostile. I mean, the guilt washing over me immediately for listening to a song that has that as the title. But the payoff was so great. It's just ripping and thrashing and going so fast, and then he finally gets to screaming fucking Hostile. When I tell you I could feel all of the angst and rage and anger in my body of feeling scared, alone, confused. I don't know where I am. I don't know why kids don't like me. I don't know why I am the way I am. I don't know why I feel so much. But for these few minutes, for this 2 minutes and 48 seconds, I could get lost into fucking Hostile. Because you know what? I was fucking hostile. And a crazy thing about the scream for that, where he says, you know, fucking Hostile, it's just completely distorted. Apparently, Dimebag Daryl was a big fan of Nine Inch Nails. And he really loved what Trent Reznor was doing and the sounds and everything, especially on like Head Like a Hole. And so he was like really inspired by the way that vocal was being presented. So he's like, he has an idea, and he brings in this like Tascam 4-track recorder, and he just cranks the preamp way up, and he's like singing it like this. And that's how they capture Phil Anselmo screaming fucking Hostile just like that. And I think even the dad who had recorded and worked in recording industry, the dad of Vinny and Dimebag, comes in. He's like, you can't record it like that. Like, nobody's going to be able to master that. Like, that's impossible. But that's what's on the album right there, if you didn't know. Okay, this love. This is a good one. This love, just the concept, up until this point, I'd heard ballads by Metallica. I'd heard slower songs that, got heavy by the end. I'd heard what Testament could do, what Metallica could do, what Megadeth could do, what Slayer could do. Seasons in the Abyss, it's like the song is like slower, and then we get to the thrashy part. But I had never heard anybody take this like really slow, strumming clean riff, and he's just saying things softly and calmly. And then when it comes in with the chorus of this love, and it's punching you. It's punching you. It's literally every strike of the guitar, bass, and drums together mixed with his screams. It is like the most abusive audio in the best way. It is pulverizing your ears, your mind, and your spirit. And I couldn't get enough. I wanted that feeling. And it still does something to me. When I saw them playing live and they did this love, I was so excited to headbang along to each of those hits, to each of those strikes. Oh my God. Just scratches an itch. I don't know what to tell you. It is what it is. This song, this love, this is the one that I decided I could have gone and made a video about New Level or Walk. But when I was wanting to really illustrate what this song did, that's exactly what I did. Is I showed me listening to it for the first time, and as it starts, it's literally the sound waves are beating the shit out of me. If you've never seen it, it's one of my older videos. But it's, I think it illustrates exactly. It's like this song is beating me up, and I like it. I like the way it feels. I like the way it feels to kind of get knocked around by this song. I'm not saying I'm like, this didn't like awaken a BDSM in me. I promise. No kink shaming. You do whatever you want to do. That's not for me. But I'm just saying there was something about the tormenting, aggressive energy that was coming from the song that really did it for me. I needed it at the time, and I think it's stayed with me forever. And I love it. Okay, track 6. This is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like something on the tape, something happened either in the original version of, I feel like in that copy that he gave me, one side had Gish and the other side, this side had Vulgar Display, but I feel like in that first time around, it didn't have all of Vulgar Display, like only a certain amount, and then it cut off. Because my first half of this album is like burned into my brain. And then the second half, I feel like I got more of it maybe a year or two later when I got my hands on like an actual copy of the album without my parents knowing, of course. And then that's when I got a chance to spend more time with Rise, No Good, Live in a Hole, Regular People, By Demons Be Driven, and Hollow, the back half, the second side. I can't remember correctly, it's been a long time, but I talked about this phenomenon before where you had like side A that would get so much more playtime, especially in cassettes. I know it wasn't just a side A because, like I said, it shared with Pumpkin's Gish. But you'd get this like side A phenomenon of where you'd sit down, pop in your Walkman, put in side A, listen to it. You get all the way to the end or near the end, and then the trip stops, or you got to get out and start over. And oftentimes you wouldn't have the instinct, or at least I wouldn't have the instinct to put it in on side B when I pick back up the album. But I would go back to side 1, start over at the beginning, and it just created this weird phenomenon where the first half of albums got a lot more attention than the back half. And, I've talked about this before in the show, but I don't know how many of you experience something like that. But Rise, what comes back to me about this one is it's time to rise. I just remember with my brother, when that would happen, we would just like contort our bodies. Like every time he would hit that note, we would like swivel up in our chairs. And I just remember laughing a lot with my brother about that, like it's time to rise, like it was like your spine would shoot up towards the ceiling. And I have a lot of good memories of that, sharing that time with my brother. And I hope you guys don't mind when I do that. I had this guy in the comments once. I had posted the video about sailing the seas of cheese, and my brother and I watching the video and having such a great memory about it. And he was very hypercritical. He was like, "You wasted this opportunity talking about some stupid memory when you could be telling us about the album or something." And I was like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that the appeal is that I'm sharing my experience with it. I'm not just a fact guy. I don't just sit here and kind of like read off like what it was about the album, but I'm just kind of taking this back in time as to how I remember it. And I know I probably repeat myself a lot of the time and say like, and then my brother and I did this, and then my brother and I did this. But, you know, that's how I access these memories. That's how I go back. That's how when I make anything that I put on the internet is it's like I'm accessing these pockets of time, and they're always with my brother, especially from the teenage years. It wasn't until we start splitting off, you know, that we're kind of exploring our own musical identities. But so much of our lives were intertwined, and so much of it was I'm showing him something, he's showing me something, we're sharing it together, we're discovering it together. It's a big part of having an older brother who's cool as shit, and I love him. Next time I see him, this would be like an album that we would put on and have so many good memories about. But that's what I remember about Rise. No Good, Attack the Radical. This is these are the ones that I'll absolutely listen to. The song, amazing, incredible piece of music, but I don't have a tremendous amount of like anchors or roots from this song. You know what I mean? Like, I remember playing it. I remember it being there, liking the riffs. But if I'm sitting here and telling you like true stories about the song or what inspired behind it, I don't have anything super heavy. Okay, Live in a Hole. This is definitely where you hear these really interesting guitar styles and takes that set Pantera apart from just riffs, just from Paul muted heavy riffs. It's these very unusual bends and twists that made them have what I was talking about earlier, the bluesiness to them. And I know that's a weird thing to apply, but it's definitely in there. There's some Texas grit and motion to it. You know, a lot of times when you listen to Pantera, you can kind of feel this like move in your body before you get to the pounding and the skull crushing. But there are several times you can feel in your body this kind of a swerve. And that's very, very signature Pantera. And I think you experience it a lot on Live in a Hole. Right, we're nearing the end of the album, and I don't have as much to say about each of these songs. You know, we get to Regular People, Conceit, which is don't fuck with this. Catchy, riff-driven, heavy, classic in line. I wouldn't say that I would skip any song on this album, but I don't have anything really powerful to chime in about on Regular People, Conceit, but I do on By Demons Be Driven. By Demons Be Driven, what do you think a 13-year-old, 14-year-old Christian kid going to church camps and then putting on Vulgar Display is experiencing when he hears By Demons Be Driven? It's pretty awesome. It's rebellious. It was a feeling of embracing the evil, of allowing a demon to feel it. I know some of you know what I mean who come from backgrounds like mine. Don't let this thought experiment scare you. But something happens to the psyche of somebody, especially an adolescent kid, who's told he has to be good all the time. He has to follow the straight and narrow. And anytime he thinks impure thoughts or does the wrong thing, that's like Satan and the enemy And so one of the things that tends to happen is sometimes you want it to be. You want it to be demons. Sometimes you want to just be like, I am so tired. I am so exhausted of this battle that I am waging daily to not allow myself to feel certain things and to feel wrong and bad and evil for thinking things. That really does a number. I look at my kids and I think I can't imagine that kind of feeling about themselves all the time. You know, for like desiring, lusting after a physical body, being turned on by pornography, by, you know, having mean, evil thoughts about wanting to hurt somebody or wanting to steal or do something violent or dangerous or blow something up or break a window or just having feelings, going through growing up and just feeling a sense of being out of place and not sure how to handle things. And if I was on top of all that energy, looking at my kids and being like, hey, I know every day is hard. You have to deal with peers and who you are as a person. And by the way, anytime you think these things, you know, you're probably being influenced by the enemy and, you know, you need to pray and get right with God and da-da-da-da. Not to belabor the point, but my God, it really, really fucks with you. And Vulgar Display of Power was an escape. It was allowing myself at least to feel like I'm surrendering to some demons for a little while. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Nothing happened. No evil forces entered my house and possessed me. Okay? If you believe that, we disagree. It was like somebody who dresses up like Dracula on Halloween and they look at themselves in the mirror, which you can't because you're a vampire, but we're just in costume, guys. But you look in the mirror and for a moment you want to be the sinister monster. Right? Or you're something else. You have this imaginary thing about like, well, what if you see a monster movie, you see a vampire movie. I would say a vampire was a big thing. I'd see a vampire movie and I'd be like, well, wouldn't it be cool to be like the big head evil vampire? Darkness is alluring, especially when you're told it's so bad all the time. And by demons be driven, when he screamed that, I remember that resonating through my body so much. And now, since that doesn't have so much power over me, it's just a killer song. Now we close out on Hollow. And Hollow is another slower piece of music that then goes into something heavy. And the guitars on Hollow, I don't think I realized just how popular that song has become. It's become one of the more popular songs off of this album because I think of that guitar work and how it was incorporated live with other pieces of music like Domination and how they would utilize it on tour. But the guitar parts harmonizing together, you can hear the Metallica influence in there, the older Metallica influence from like Master of Puppets and Orion. And, you know, I always do think it's funny when Phil Anselmo says, talked for hours last night. It's such a ballad vocal phrase to have right there. That's very sweet and syrupy. It's like a little glimpse of the glam and the lighter side of them that comes in on Hollow. But once it gets in, it gets heavy, all that goes away and it gets brutal and crushing. And it's a great way to close out the album. Now I know I kind of jumped over a little bit on like Live in a Hole, Regular People, and No Good. I know I didn't give those where they're due. And so if those are some of your favorite songs, feel free to comment. Feel free to say something. And, if I missed something on one of the songs that you found to be really important, I'd be happy to address it. Because like I told you at the top of the episode, I thought I was going to be doing another album. And then I was like, I'm going to do this one at the last minute. So I tried to come in at the ready. But, nobody's perfect. And I wasn't able to get as much preparation. But before I get out of here, there are a few things that I wanted to mention also while I was researching that I thought were pretty interesting. So the album's cover famously depicts a man being punched in the face. That was shot by photographer Brad Guice, Guice. I don't know. So he shot the cover for Cowboys from Hell. Now, the story went around for a while. I think Vinnie Paul was the one who said, yeah, they hired a guy who got paid $10 to be hit in the face. And that was the story going around the time. We're going to, punch in the face and you get $10 every time. And it took him 30 times to get the perfect shot. And that was the story that went around. But the photographer, Brad, has come around and said, no, that's not what happened. It's actually a model. It was a friend of his named Sean Cross. They had it set up perfectly with a red light and make his hair look like it's getting blown back. And they did it just perfectly to have the fist aligned and make it look like he was getting struck in the face just right. They're professionals, and they figured out how to do it without having to actually punch a guy. But of course, in the 90s, it's a much more metal answer to say that you got punched in the face, 32 times, Rex Brown claimed. But it was just a post picture. So sorry if that disappoints you if you think, oh man, I always thought a guy was really getting hit on that cover. It does look like he's getting hit. You got to admit it. It does. And then some of the last things I wanted to say that were pretty funny is I was reading some of the stories about while they were recording this album. And man, these guys were wild. They were drinking and partying super hard during the recording of this album. They would play some games during this album recording. One was called Twist and Hurl. And what that would be is they'd get a bunch of beers, these little miniature beer bottles, and they would drink the beer, spin around in a circle, and they would, after they turn around, they would try to throw the bottle at a stop sign and hit it. And that was the game. They played it every single day. And the police eventually started catching wind of it, and there was a time where they were playing the game and a bunch of flashlights appeared from the bushes and all these cops came out because they were watching them play this game. And they said they don't know how they talked themselves out of it at all. But they said that the cops in Texas at the time weren't very bright because there would be funny things that happened, these guys would come around and ask them questions about what they're doing, and then they would show up during the day and they would try to get into the recording studio to figure out what's going on, and they would show up in uniform as police to kind of give them a hard time, what's going on here, they would show up. And then later that night, the very same police officer who showed up in uniform would show up in plain clothes and show up to the band and be like, hey guys, what's going on? I want to hang out and you guys want to buy some weed or whatever. And they're like, no. Because they could clearly see it was the cop trying to bust him, trying to, go undercover and bust him. And then the other game that they played was this thing called Chicken Break. Oh my God. They would drive in a car and then somebody randomly in the car would just pull the emergency brake suddenly, which would cause the car to screech in. And apparently there was one time they were going 60 miles per hour and Rex decides it's going to be funny to pull the chicken brake and they just spun out and nobody died and nobody got hurt. But some of the stories that I read while they were recording this, I was like, well, they really lived up to their name with how wild and crazy and partying they were during this time. And I think that when they toured on this, when they toured on Vulgar with Megadeth, I think Megadeth was touring on Countdown to Extinction, and they're on tour with them. And I believe that Dave Mustaine was sober at the time, and that was one of the most difficult parts. Was the Pantera crew was not sober, and the Megadeth crew was, and that's the same tour where Dimebag Darrell dreamed up the drink called the Black Toothed Grin, which now is a very popular drink that he took from a Megadeth lyric. And it inspired him to make Crown Royal with a splash of Coke, and that's the Black Tooth Grin, which is from a lyric of Sweating Bullets. So that, my friends, is Pantera's Vulgar Display of Power. I may have struggled a little bit getting through this one, but what are you going to do? Started out thinking that I was going to be doing Temple of the Dog, talking about that album. I literally had listened to it like 2 or 3 times today, and I was like, oh, I'm so ready. I feel so prepared to do this one. And then when I got into the studio, it's now late. When I got into the studio, and I can't believe that happened. I can't believe that I had forgotten that I'd done it. But I'm here to tell you that I've gone through quite a lot of albums, and one of the things that's really slowed down the progress of this show, and I'll be honest with you all right now, is when I started doing interviews at Lazy Pickle Studios, and then the dream was to build it here. It's been slow going to put things together the way I wanted. I think I can get there, but it hasn't gone as easily as I wanted it to. And one of the things, kind of a consequence of that, is I decided a while ago, like, I don't want to do Zoom digital interviews anymore. I want to just do them in person. I want to have guests on real life in the studio. And I actually think that's really limiting what I'm able to do with this show. And I've decided as of today that I'm going to start allowing, virtual interviews again. I've had plenty of offers via email through artists and bands to set up something like that, to set up a virtual interview. And I've turned them down because I was like, no, I really want to make this podcast into a live experience. I think that conversations when you're in person with people are just much more compelling. But it's really limiting who I'm able to access, because there's artists that they're in New York, they're on tour, they'll do an interview with you, not a problem. And it's so much easier for these people that have very busy lives to sit down and do a virtual interview. And I think, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to hope that I get guests in this space again. I hope I'm going to have some live interviews. I hope I can get there. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue to start doing some virtual interviews. I hope that's okay with you. I just think that it's starting to slow down how often I can have a guest. If you were confused as to why there's just so many back-to-back me just by myself talking about albums. 1, it's been difficult to get things set up here. 2, I can occasionally go to Lazy Pickle and get interviews like I did, but what I really need to be okay with is if there's a band on the road, if there's a band out there in the world that wants to talk to me, an artist, I should not miss the opportunity to interview them, get a great podcast to share with you, because I think all of you would love it if I suddenly had somebody that you're like, oh my God, that's so cool that Jacob's getting a chance to interview, insert this person there. And it's more than likely if I allow the virtual ones to come back. So I'm going to allow it again. So be prepared for that. So thank you for taking the time with me to talk about Vulgar Display of Power. I hope you were able to enjoy it. And if it wasn't for you and you're not really into metal or, can't support this band for your reasons, I understand and I respect that. But for those of you who were able to join in and reminisce about metal and F-bombs and feeling this sense of like, oh, I'm evil and I'm unstoppable force. It was fun. It's fun for me to reminisce about. But don't forget to use, I'm supposed to talk about Pantheon first. Okay. So before I get out of here, I want to give a shout out to Pantheon Podcast. Pantheon Podcast is your solution to music-centric podcasts out there. They really are the number one of all the music podcasts. Any band you can think of, they exist on Pantheon Podcast, and I'm just lucky to be a part of it. And I'm so grateful. I've been with them now, I think, for 2 years. So long enough to have been doing Temple of the Dog episode that I forgot about with Pantheon Podcast, I'm sure of. But also don't forget to use distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. Get 30% off your first year. And of course, I can't do this show without you coming around every single time. And hopefully I'm going to make it more enjoyable this year with more guests virtually and in studio, so we can have some more subjects and not have me just having to go, hey, did I do that album yet or not? So I appreciate your patience. Thanks for joining me on Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens. This has been Vulgar Display of Power, Pantera. I will see you next time.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna